explosive testimony on his years as an undercover informant, providing information to the FBI on Russian criminal networks that are operating right inside the United States. He also contends in his testimony and his written briefs that the FBI, that Russia attempted to hide their ongoing aid to help sustain Iran's nuclear industry at the time the Obama administration, in fact, approved the sale of 20% of U.S. Uranium mining rights to Russia. Now, we did reach out to Hillary Clinton for a statement. Her spokesman called the informant, quote, a charade and a distraction. Here with more, Fox News contributor broke this story. Sarah Carter, lawyer for the FBI informant, Victoria Tunsing. We've got to put this in context here. He worked for the FBI many, many years, and then he worked in particular, if I'm not mistaken, Sarah, 6 years on this particular case. Oh, I'm sorry, Victoria, you're shaking your head.
Yes, he was introduced to the FBI, and they immediately sent him over to work with the CIA, which he did for about 15, 20 years. And then when he got involved in the uranium and Russian places, the CIA turned him back over to FBI counterintelligence. So he
finally testifies today. Sarah, I want to go to your full report, but I want to remind everybody of important facts here. We don't have enough uranium in this country. And before the CFIUS sign-off, the 9 separate agencies signing off on the Uranium One deal, they knew that Vladimir Putin had operatives in this country that wanted to get a foothold in our uranium industry, and that they were involved in bribery and racketeering and kickbacks and money laundering and all sorts of behavior. They knew all of this even 18 months prior, and they still allowed this to go forward. Tell us what you can now break open tonight.
Well, I think that's important. But what's even more important, Sean, is that they knew that the Russians were still double dealing with Iran. This was the biggest concern for the Republicans at that time. This is the reason why they didn't want the Uranium One deal to go through. And they were screaming mad about it. But everybody tried to assure everyone that Russia was no longer, and the Russians themselves, they were lying about it, that they were no longer dealing with Iran on their nuclear reactors. But at that time, William Campbell, the informant, was actually providing information, and this was months before, that Russia was still dealing with Iran. And this is a major issue. So despite all the information that he provided to the FBI and to their counterintelligence unit, the Obama administration chose to ignore that and move forward with the sale of Uranium One, which was the Canadian mining company.
And the more important point is that he tried to tell people and warn people specifically about everything that was going on. And he was told and has proof and evidence that, in fact, the response was, well, it's not going to be a problem as long as Hillary's in the administration, then as Secretary of State.
Yes, I mean, this is exactly what he was testifying, and I know Victoria will be able to speak more to his testimony today, but this was what he was testifying to those committee staffers who were questioning him, that the Russians were consistently bragging about their relationship with the Clintons and that they would be able to move this through the Obama administration without any trouble. And I know that that's something that he really wanted to bring forward. Look, he's been suffering from cancer. He had his second bout with a cancer diagnosis, and he believed that he wasn't going to make it, and he wanted to ensure that his information became public, and this was the only way he could do it.
All right, Victoria, you were there the entire time today. This is your client. We've been waiting for this testimony for a long time. I know you've had to sift through years of information. What was the reaction, if you can tell us, of these committees, number one, and number two, if you can explain the why it never made sense to allow, when we knew Vladimir Putin's, he had a band of supporters in the country that wanted to get our uranium, and then they're still doing this with Iran that Sarah is mentioning. How could this ever happen?
Let me take you back to 2005, because that's when this really started, the Russian plan to take over U.S. uranium piles. That was when, guess what, Bill Clinton, former president, and his multi-gazillionaire friend, Frank Giuffra, traveled to Kazakhstan and bestowed all kinds of praises on the dictator there and ended up, oh my surprise, with uranium mining rights. And it was then, my client is told, that the Russians begin to plan strategically how they could take over uranium, particularly in the United States. And one of the key elements of that plan was to get this CFIUS approval to buy uranium-1. It all started in 2005. Yes, and
why didn't they listen to your client? It sounds like he was dumbfounded. He had all this information. He's in the heart of it. Sees all the corruption around it. He knows, I assume, that we don't have enough uranium resources on our own. Why didn't anybody listen to him?
He's telling the FBI agents, that's who he's supposed to be working with, and he's telling them about the strategic plan of Putin to take over the uranium industry, and he's writing up these reports and telling them about it. He's also telling them about the corruption in these companies. All of them are, they're all one company, even though they have different names. But they were so confident, Sean, the Russians, that they told Mr. Campbell that with the Clintons' help, it was a shoo-in to get CFIUS approval. And they were so confident in that they even had him open up a new office because they were planning on the kind of business they were going to do as soon as CFIUS approved it.
And also, Sean, Victoria brought up a really good point, and your question, he did approach his FBI handlers. He asked them, why aren't you doing anything about this? Why aren't we arresting people now that we know this is going on? Why is this, uranium-1 deal still going through? And what he was told was, this is all politics. This is about politics. And that's what his FBI handlers told him. So take it from there.
And the FBI director at the time, Robert Mueller, did he know about this?
We don't know. He was Mr. Campbell was told by the FBI that he was being told, and they were taking it upstairs. And he was also told that the President Obama had it in his daily briefing twice. When he was asked today, when Mr. Campbell was asked today, so why did you do all this for so long, and you were losing money and you were sick? He said, because I'm a patriot, and that's what I believe.
And then we got to take everything back to the money. And then the kickbacks, and then the connection to the Clinton Foundation. We're just out of time. I want to thank you both. We will stay on this story as well. It's unbelievable.